Story 1. Inconsistent behavior. Granted, he wasn't a bad person and we are now friends. But trying to make a romantic relationship work with someone with avoidant tendencies is tiring. They are not ill-spirited but will never really trust you enough to let you in. Story 2. The fact that he lied once about important things. When I found out the first time, I forgave him. I should have dumped him instead. I stayed with the liar until he dumped me, and I had to discover afterward that he had been lying about more things. I was naive and stupid. Story 3. He was spending the night, and we were watching TV in the living room. He fell asleep. I was exhausted. I tried to wake him and couldn't, so I went to bed. A few hours later, he woke me up sobbing like a toddler because I left him. This man was 6 feet 4 inches, strongly built, and very physically attractive. I thought, wow, he's really in touch with his emotions, very different from what I'm used to. It only got worse. He began having anger outbursts and almost hitting me, and that eventually escalated, all within 4 months. I would not have endured all that had I not ignored the fact that he could not manage his emotions. Story 4. Less than 30 minutes into the date at a nice restaurant, he pulled out his vape and vaped under his shirt. He couldn't even wait until the date was over or at least go to the men's room. Story 5. Well, we were 17 and he was really, really handsome, but he was kind of dumb. Not in a malicious way, just plain dumb. I ignored that because of his face. It was a fun few months, but then reality set in for me that it would never work. Luckily, he was leaving for the Navy, so that took care of that. He was also really straight, which back in 1970 to 71 had nothing to do with sexual orientation and everything to do with counterculture. I was not straight, not at all. I was also marching in anti-war protests at college and in Washington, D.C., while he went off and joined the Navy, knowing he'd go to Vietnam. Sometimes I check up on him on Facebook. He seems happy, so I'm happy for him. He's in his 70s now, like me, and he's still quite handsome. Story 6. Knowing they had previously helped a married person cheat on their spouse with them, they kept telling this story every time we met someone new, as if they were proud of it. They also told me in detail how they had sex in the middle of the street at night with another person before we met, describing every detail of how it happened. Story 7. She didn't have a life outside of me. She stopped talking and hanging out with her friends and only wanted to hang out with me. I encouraged her to do things by herself or hang out with her friends, but she said she didn't want to. At first, she didn't mind that I spent time with my friends, but then a couple of months went by, and she constantly made plans on days I was going to meet them. I had to end it because I felt suffocated being with someone who didn't understand it's okay to have friends and do things that don't involve your partner. Also, she was already planning our life together, including getting off birth control, and that freaked me out. Story 8. How he and his family treated me. His family disliked me as soon as they heard about me and started being mean to me. He never stood up for me and allowed his family to disrespect me. Also, he talked to his ex-girlfriend, walking out of the room to take her calls and getting excited whenever she did call. Eventually, that stopped, but it was a huge red flag early on in our relationship. Story 9. I was in a long-distance relationship. My ex would only text me consistently or call if he was feeling intimate. Otherwise, he would typically only send 1 to 2 text messages a day and would never call me. Story 10. I've noticed most young men have this tendency to expect women to carry the whole conversation, especially because I'm extroverted. I ask questions and talk and chat, but I've noticed if I go quiet, they don't ask me any questions in return about my life. I'm now very aware of it. Story 11. He could not cook or clean up after himself. His mom paid for everything because he could not keep a job. But he had the most beautiful abs I have ever seen. Story 12. My first date with this girl, she made stromboli. It was delicious. Everything was going well. During dinner, she got up to use the bathroom. When she came back, I'd finished my plate, and she joked that I'd secretly dumped the rest of the meal in the trash. Haha. Yeah, right. Funny. Except a month later, she got upset about something else, and then she's like, "You probably did dump that stromboli in the trash." Another couple of weeks later, another fight. "I know you threw out that stromboli. I heard the garbage disposal from the bathroom. You liar." For the 2 years I tried to make it work, she'd bring it up every time there was even a hint of a disagreement. Lori, the Stromboli was great. I never touched your garbage disposal. I swear to God. You just needed to chill. Story 13. Talked about her ex constantly. Recently got a DUI and lied about it. Mentions, I saw this on TikTok all the time. Admitted she has hit many people's cars in parking lots then left. Laughs when you say she lacks empathy. Story 14. Her family was racist in a marry a fairer complexion Indian or white kind of way. I am now a black doctor, so it's safe to say I was out of luck. I loved her to bits, though. I hope she found happiness. Story 15. Borderline personality disorder. I've been in 2 relationships with people with borderline personality disorder. It wasn't easy at all. I'm sorry for the sincerity. This is kind of a truth off my chest for me. If you have borderline personality disorder, I hope you're doing all right and find someone who never triggers your disorder. Story 16. The first lie wasn't even directed at me. I overheard a story he was telling a salesperson. Eventually, I learned his whole life was a lie. If he was speaking, he was lying. And no, these people do not believe their own lies. They know the truth from the lies. They just prefer the lie. Story 17. Having a favorite person. I was the favorite person. They became really obsessive. Then, when I stopped being the favorite person, I was dropped very quickly. Story 18. Being addicted to their phone. I'm now a married father of 2, who has to do almost everything. She literally spends almost all of her time watching TikTok and Instagram Reels. I work more, I earn more, I cook, I clean, I do school and daycare drop-offs and pickups, I do bedtime routines, I do laundry, I handle all of the bills and finances. Don't be stupid like me. Story 19. He implied we should be saying, I love you, the second time I met him and wanted me to meet his parents less than 2 weeks in. It wasn't necessarily because he was attractive. We just had chemistry, which I hadn't had with anyone since my breakup, and the internet told me if he wanted to, he would, so I thought he was just wooding. In summary, I'm stupid. Story 20. Childishness. Overreactions. Love to make people fight for her. Another one, very difficult to reciprocate simple things. Taking offense for receiving gifts, prideful and stubborn as they say. The rose has thorns, never forget this. Story 21. Extreme narcissism and sociopathy. No respect for anyone or anything. Extremely grandiose sense of intelligence but was a dumb person overall, except when it came to manipulation. Story 22. My ex was a former high-ranking gang member. He was no longer involved when we dated. However, he was a manipulative person who tried to control me. Story 23. I tried to brush off the fact that he drank a 12-pack of beer every day after work for 7 months straight. Another red flag was that he was newly divorced and asked me to immediately move in with him. I did because I had my own issues, mainly never receiving the attention I should have gotten when I was little. I was starved for attention. Story 24. His past. I don't like to judge people based on their past, but I should have known when every woman he was with was a crazy psycho. I should have run. I now have a child, and trying to navigate around his continued verbal abuse at drop-offs is incredibly difficult. Story 25. Said they thought the Unabomber was right on the first date. Maybe he was, I don't know, I've never read the manifesto. Either way, that's a hell of a thing to say on a first date. Story 26. He wasn't even that attractive. Just the eggplant was good. But referring to a female coworker as fat when she's really not. Getting mad when I spent time with my brother. Getting mad if I am texting a male friend. Getting mad when I expressed interest in getting a tattoo in honor of my deceased best friend who is a guy. Story 27. This was in the 1980s in Detroit where it was hard to get a job, so this is probably why alarm bells didn't go off. I was 22 and met a guy a few years older who had just gotten out of the army and hadn't found a job. He was really attractive, had a great personality, and was crazy about me, but it took me a while to realize that he wasn't very bright. All my friends and my mom just loved him, but he couldn't keep a job and could never accept what he did wrong. Years later, after we were both married to other people, I found out that he abused his wife. He had never shown any violent or abusive tendencies to me, and from what I've heard, once the kids started coming, he got stressed out over having a family to provide for. I'm so glad we broke up. Story 28. None. I'm proud to say that I have never ignored any red flags in my entire life. The downside to that is that I had my very first relationship very late, but it was still worth it. Story 29. He would make me shower when I came over, wouldn't let me hang out with friends without him, and would make comments about paying for plastic surgery for my post-125-pound weight loss, and the list goes on. This is the same guy I broke up with after he was caught by my friend swiping on Tinder the first time he met my core friends. This is also the guy who bought 2 golden doodles because I mentioned I wanted one, and asked for a puppy play date with my 2 other dogs. I let him bring them over, just to tell me I should have let him swipe on Tinder because women are attracted to doctors. I met my husband on Bumble 2 weeks after I last saw the narcissist. Story 30. She lacked commitment. She told things I shared in confidence to my friends, which isolated me from them and stole them away from me. She refused to treat her borderline personality disorder because medicine was too expensive with her insurance. She stopped going to the gym, but guess what? With those expenses cut, she could always afford a bag of cocaine, Adderall, and drinks on the weekend. Story 31. Asked me questions, never listened to my answers. Absolutely adorable and a sweet person, but she never paid attention to anything I said, and it sucked. Story 32. He was not into me at all. We were together for 2 years and he never kissed me on the lips. There was physical touch and intimacy, he just never kissed me. He would not break up with me and I was okay with it because I so badly wanted it to work. This was 15 years ago and just thinking about it still makes me want to crawl into a hole. Story 33. He often gave vague responses and left my messages undelivered, never being read for 2 months. We met on October 21st, and he broke up with me on the 17th of this month. I suggested if we could be friends, and he said, I had an online correspondence before you, but I don't like to have relationships, which made me think he said no. It was bound to end abruptly since he's terrible at open communication despite saying he valued that. The man couldn't get the courage to talk to his mother about me. Can you believe that? Story 34. The narcissistic character traits. He was the most physically handsome person I have been with. I married him. He had a wall mirror installed in our bedroom. It turns out he wanted to see himself while we were having sex. If this doesn't give you an indication of how the next few years were going to be like, well, needless to say, I ended up in marriage counseling, and it took someone to make me see it wasn't me he was in love with. Story 35. He accidentally texted in a group chat. Next year, Croatia Yacht Week. Bad women. I was 4 months in and in love. Crushed me. But he texted me, sorry about that. And I just said, it's all good. Spent 8 years in constant pain and argument. We're done now, and I'm so happy. Pay attention to red flags, people, or suffer. Story 36. All of her exes were mentally ill, dangerous, and stupid, among other things. We were together for more than a year, and I never met any of her friends or family. She wasn't really close to anyone, and according to her, just about everyone from her past had betrayed her in horrible ways. I should have recognized the red flag that she was the common factor in all these disasters. Story 37. She was talking about how attractive her friend was, and 2 weeks later, she breaks up with me and changes her sexuality to be with her. I feel so foolish for not seeing this and not expecting her to break up with me. I don't care that she changed to be a lesbian because I believe people should be who they want to be if it makes them happy. What really stings is that a week later, she gets with a new girlfriend. Now they are on Spotify non-stop talking about each other. And it makes me sick. Whatever, though, I finally got over it and am going to ask out someone else. Story 38. Everything. My ex was clingy, like obsessive clingy. She got mad at me for every little thing and always accused me of cheating, even when I spent all my time with her. She would get upset to the point where she'd threaten to hurt herself if I tried to do anything on my own. I had a crush on this girl since middle school, and we started dating when I was 24 or 25. I was so excited to finally be with her, but I was blind for almost 2 years. Those were the worst years of my life. We broke up and I completely blamed myself for a year or two, and so did she. She has never taken any sort of responsibility. It really messed me up, destroying my ability to trust anyone. I'm in a happy relationship of almost 5 years now, but I still feel a little messed up from it. She really contributed to my already messed up trust issues. Story 39. Emotional unavailability. It seemed like a win-win at the time. I felt honored to be with someone so fine, but then my brain developed, and I needed more than just abs. Story 40. Just got out of jail because he beat his ex's new partner who touched his daughter. I was like, okay, fair. He lived with a guy who was growing and selling weed while police were checking in on him daily. I also don't do drugs. He loved to drink. I'm sober. He vaped while having sex with me. I don't vape or smoke. He love-bombed me too. There were so many red flags I ignored. Never again. Story 41. Talked about all her exes in such a horrible way, and she was witchy. On our first date, she tried using a poisonous herb to cast a curse on an ex. I was 18 and she was a big-breasted goth though. Literally, what was I supposed to do? To clarify, being a witch isn't a red flag. The curse was.